Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. When I hear that trumpet sound, I'm gonna get up out of the ground. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Go down yonder, Gabriel, put your foot on the landing sea. Oh, Gabriel, don't you blow that trumpet until you hear from me. Well, I looked way over yonder, and what do you think I see? I see a band of angels, and they're coming after me. I looked way down the river, saw the people dressed in white. I knew they were God's people, 'cause I saw them doing right. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. When I hear that trumpet sound, I'm gonna get up out of the ground. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down.
The Contrast House project followed on the heels of the Great Depression, and people were really concerned about trying to find affordable housing for people in the Appalachian region, and this was Berea College's answer to that housing problem. 80 years ago, some people got together and they came up with the idea of going out into the foothills, looking for a traditional house, purchasing it, and then moving it to campus. And then the second part of the plan was to have students through their labor and faculty helping out, was to build a house using local lumber from the college forest and obviously local labor, and using a well-designed floor plan. The plan was to build another house. And these two houses, the traditional house and the new house, would be placed on campus close together so that people could walk through and take a look at the traditional house, and then take a walk through the other house and look at all the improvements and how much better it was. This project, because of the contrasting of these two houses, the project became known as the Contrast House Project. Part of the Contrast House Project was that the college would sell the floor plans to people in the area that would be interested in building a similar type house. In the beginning, the plans cost these people all of 25 cents. Eventually, the college bumped the price up to 50 cents, and it ended up being all of $1. But in the end, the college sold quite a few plans. People went out into the foothills and built houses very similar to the Contrast House that was built on campus. In the year 2015, sustainability, sustainable living, those are terms that you hear quite frequently here on Berea College's campus. For example, the building right behind me, Lincoln Hall. It was recently renovated, and they use geothermal heat. They have skylights to bring in natural light, and they have sensors on the light switches, so as people walk into the room and out of the room, the lights automatically turn themselves off. Even though these two houses that were built 80 years ago do not still exist on the campus, the legacy of sustainable living, it carries on.
I have a sort of an interesting role on campus, just working with students as they, come into the college and work all the way through. And part of that, I not in the classroom working with students, but more in my office or working with large groups of students. But I'm always looking for those opportunities to talk, to provide those sort of object lessons, I guess, of what we're doing. And one of my favorite object lessons was a former provost who always talked about Phelps Stokes, and the bricks were made by our students, and they were put together, and it's like that's the mark that those students left on campus. And that's where I thought, when we had the Contrast House, and being able to point at that and be able to talk about it a little bit, and seeing some of the parallels to what we're doing now with the Sense House and some other kinds of things.
My first memories of the Contrast House were through Rudy Osalny, who was one of the first people I met when I first came to Berea. Rudy was continually looking for ways to improve his craft. He was a craftsman of the first order. As some people gave him credit or the title of being perhaps the best wood turner of his time. Rudy was second to none when it came to ideas about turning.
Both high school and college, I had Rudy Osonic as an instructor, and I believe Rudy was probably the best turner in the country, for as I know. He's well recognized and he's honored in several different ways. You can see his name in catalog and videos and so forth, but I did get some of the very best instruction. I'm not saying I'm the best, but I do enjoy turning and so forth.
I think Rudy was an individual that just was thinking creatively about lots of things. He asked a lot of questions about why do we do things this way? Are there better ways we can do this? And in his interest in serving people in the region, he created this idea with his students and students from the home ec department as well, that actually designed and built a house. I guess it was built originally behind the alumni building, but later was moved to the present location. Rudy used techniques that would save materials. He was very careful about that. And, I think the appearance of the house was in contrast to the appearance of many other homes that existed in the region at the time, and that was one of the reasons I believe that it was the contrast house. The idea that it was comfortable. And it could bring pleasure to the people who lived in this house or houses like this.
I'm gonna get up out of the ground. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down.
We had been in James Hall as dormitory directors before coming here. We'd just been married a couple of years before, so it was new for us. Our friends Bob and Maxine Menifee had lived here, and they were going to move to Pearson's Hall as directors of the dorm, and thought that it'd be a good place for us to come and take over for them. So we very gladly did that, and we had 2 years here, didn't we?
I think so.
We had a great backyard. I mean, the whole women's athletic field and the college gardens down there. So it was a wonderful place to live in. I don't remember it being uncomfortable, do you?
No, but it could be chilly.
Were we on the college heating system? Maybe.
I think we were.
But there was some kind of available heat that was fine. And the fireplace was more for pleasure, I think, than for heat.
Very cheerful.
Oh, it was nice.
It was nice. They had a beautiful fireplace that I remember. And that was one of the joys I think we had. Women at that time, only women in the home economics department, were responsible for doing the furnishings in the least expensive way possible. So, for example, they made curtains out of printed materials, sometimes using flour sacks or other products that were readily available. They wove the material for some of the furnishing covers. They did publicity on the decorating techniques that were used. They tried to do the most fashionable things at the time. And so we have pictures of various students sewing and hanging curtains and doing table coverings, making rag rugs, things like that. The whole idea of the Contrast House was to give local Appalachian families a way of improving their housing using local materials and easy to find things. The interior was entirely wormy chestnut, and all of the hardware was constructed on campus. I teach a course on interior design, and I would bring my students here to look at it as an example of architectural history and to discuss the history of the whole concept with them. All of my students know it very well.
Going down to the River Jordan, and I'm gonna bury my knees in the sand.
I'm a member of the faculty here at Berea College. I work with students in both the computer science program as well as the technology program, and in particular I work with the electronics and electricity and electronics course. And so one of the things that I've wrestled with is how to introduce home wiring in a way that's compelling and has perhaps a particularly Berean flavor to it. So a few years ago we developed this idea where we worked with a dollhouse maker who very kindly agreed to do a design based on original floor plans of the Berea Contrast House, and came up with a model that we could build at different scales. And so this is a prototype in cardboard we can take apart. And what it allows us to do is to look at the internal structure of a house. It's an experiment that we tried. There's some challenges to it. It turns out it's very hard to wire a dollhouse. There were some challenges to it, but it's a unit that I think needs to come back into the course because it really captured for the students a piece of Berea history. I think that was a really powerful part of it. And so even though we have the house and we're able to explore it, it might be that we explore a larger scale model. That would, I think, really make a marvelous cap to this as a piece, to be able to visit the actual house and see its layout and then come back and really put all of it in a historical context for the students. All of that said, though, is unfortunately the Contrast House that used to be on campus isn't anymore. It was torn down a number of years ago, and the story varies depending on who you hear it from. To the best of my understanding, it was actually, there was a bit of confusion surrounding it.
Till I reached the promised land. Then I looked way over yonder. What do you think I see? I see a band of angels and they're coming after me. Well, meet me, King Jesus, meet me. Won't you meet me in the middle of the air? And if these wings should carry me, well, I won't need another pair. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down.
We're out here at the property of Newell Jones out in Rockcastle County, and we're here to take a look at the Contrast House that he has on his property. And with this is Newell Jones over here, and this is his father, Russell Jones. Now that the college doesn't have a Contrast House, we found this one, and we thought it would be a good idea to come out here and talk about it. So Russell has driven quite a ways, and he's going to give us some information on the Contrast House. To start with, could you tell us, give us a little bit of background about your experience here at Berea?
All right, I was born here in Berea and went through the Berea College grade school that still exists up near the art building, and went through the last class that that Berea College had of the academy, and I graduated from that. I'm 90 years old.
Okay, well, glad to have you here. Let's talk about your house here. I'm real interested in How did you get the idea to build the contrast house? I know the college was selling plans, but can you tell us how you found out that the college is selling plans to build this house and why you decided to go in and try?
Let's go back a little. I was only 17 or 18 years old when we built this house. My father is the one who scoured all of eastern Kentucky for the remaining worm-eaten chestnut that was available. He did buy all of that he could find. He was on the faculty at Brewer College and was living in Brewer College and there all of his work life. He was there, created the bakery, and then later the candy kitchen. And he and my mother both were on the faculty then.
The college house was built in 1937, so this was going on shortly after the college built their house.
That is where it did originate, and it was quite new when we built this cottage.
Okay. Want to talk a little bit more about the construction on the house here. I was wondering, you said your father rounded up all the wormy chestnut. So now, did your father get the chestnut from the college, from the forest, or did he get it from all over the county?
From all over the various counties, all over eastern Kentucky, really.
Your builder was adamant about chestnut, it sounds like, or your father,
My father was the one that was really adamant about it, and he really spent a lot of time gathering the chestnut. The cottage is totally out of worm-eaten chestnut except for some hardwood floors. All the beams and everything are entirely of the worm-eaten chestnut. It resists the various things that would destroy it, and so it has lasted well here for us. The worm-eaten chestnut would be very valuable to use now as making furniture. And but it's more valuable if we can restore the house and make it livable again.
I'm glad it's made out of chestnut because that really makes it special. It's it's a contrast house, and the original was made out of chestnut. That was a good choice. Newell, you said you have some boards around here that you're going to use for repair. Yes. Are they perhaps that original wood that Russell's dad?
It's all the same wood.
We pulled out some of Newell's wormy chestnut that he had mentioned, and we've got a really nice looking board here. Looks like it's about 12 inches wide and probably at least 10 foot tall. That's a pretty good chunk of wormy chestnut.
It sure is. This piece of wood came off of the north face of the house where we added the bathroom on. So we have a few pieces of this, and we have some other additional pieces that we are keeping for house repairs and possibly for furniture building. If you pull in tight on the wood, you can see the worm holes in the chestnut, which are there in every piece. And this house, as far as upkeep on the wood, has been absolutely minimal in all of these years. The wood has done very, very well.
Gonna hold my body down, ain't no grave. Gonna hold my body down. When I hear that trumpet sound, gonna get up out of the ground, ain't no grave. Gonna hold my body down.
One of the greatest legacies of the contrast house was the wood that was reclaimed from that structure, and then it was repurposed into other items, and so the contrast house kind of lives on. And another good thing from that, once we reclaimed the lumber from the contrast house, it just kind of spread as the college remodels certain buildings on campus. Like for example, they just did Knapp Hall last year. The floor was reclaimed, and we repurposed the lumber from the floor and also ceiling joists into projects in our Appalachian Crafts class here. This is a board that is chestnut that came from the front door of the contrast house. that I took off the hinges and reclaimed the door, and a lot of projects have been made from this type of lumber. So what I'd like to show you right now is some of the projects that were created from some of the wood that has been reclaimed, repurposed here at the college. The first thing that I'd like to show you, this is a hunting knife that was made by a student in Appalachian Crafts, and the handle on this knife is made out of the wormy chestnut that came out of the contrast house. The wormy chestnut is kind of unique. How that happened was Appalachia was covered with chestnut trees, and in the 1920s, 1930s, a blight came through and killed all the chestnut trees, and while they were still dead but still standing in the forest, the worms invaded them and made homes out of them, and that created the very unique wormholes that add a very striking characteristic to the wood. The first men's dorm on Berea's campus was called Howard Hall, and it was torn down in 1972. And one of our professors at Berea College at that time reclaimed the lumber and stored it in his barn. And just a couple of years ago, I asked him if he still had some, and he did, and I brought it over to the college. And this is an example of a pocket knife that was made from the poplar that Howard Hall was constructed from. Another item that was made in Appalachian Crafts, this is a Christmas ornament that was also made from the poplar from Howard Hall. Once the college got into the mode of reclaiming and repurposing, some other wood came available. This particular ink pen was made by a student in Appalachian Crafts, and it is made out of the bleacher seats from the old Seabury Gymnasium. And it was a pine lumber, but also it was painted blue, and you can see right here is the original blue paint that came from the bleacher seat. We have also, along with the bleacher seats from Seabury Gymnasium, we've also been able to reclaim the floor, not from the very old gym floor, but the one that was built about 12, 15 years ago. And it was torn up and replaced, and the flooring from that would look like this. And we've made a lot of knife handles, pocket knives, and different things from this lumber. The last thing I'd like to talk about here, this is a small table that is used in our new farm store, which was a renovated building. Used to be Broomcraft, and they renovated it and turned it into a farm store. And so they needed some furniture, so we decided to make the furniture from some of the reclaimed lumber around campus. And this is, it has a name, we call it the B-Box table because it's made from a B-Box, and the B-Box came from the college farm. And the top of this particular table is wormy chestnut from the contrast house, and the legs on the table are made from 2x4s that were taken out of Howard Hall, and they are solid poplar.
On the cross, well, it made poor Mary moan. He looked on his disciples, said, "Take my mother home." And I looked way over yonder, and what do you think I see? I see a band of angels, and they're coming after me. I've heard of a beautiful city where the streets are paved with gold. I have not been to heaven, but so I have been told. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. When I hear that trumpet sound, gonna get up out of the ground. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down.
And just on the personal level, you know, I just found it to be an intriguing building, and it was sort of one when I first came to campus, and it's like, oh, what's that? That's a little bit out of place. It's not made of bricks. It's a little bit different. It's a small little house. What is it doing here? And even just asking questions about what it was, and then eventually, you know, doing a little bit more digging on it. And And then remember driving my kids to school on the day that it was torn down, and I didn't know it was going to be torn down, and my mouth sort of fell down, and I stopped and took a picture out my window of the pile of rubble, and so it was just on a personal level, that was a disappointing day, I guess, and the thing that was no more. In a lot of ways, the college hasn't changed since we built the Contrast House or used that. I mean, it reflects our commitments long term, who we are today when we talk about sustainability with our building practices now, with our focus on ensuring that our new buildings and renovations get up to the LEED standards. And so that's an interesting part. When you go through a Deep Green, seeing the materials that were used, and many of the materials that came from college property, in the same way that the materials for the Contrast House came from college property. And so there's some other sort of cool parallels there. One of the things, the parallels I guess that I also see is with our sustainability house. From my understanding of the Sens House in providing a sustainable living environment, and so looking at all the way from the heating system and the passive solar, and I think there's some active solar kinds of things there, to how wastewater was treated and different things like that. There's that hands-on component. We still have the active learning experience kind of thing through the labor program. All of those things were evident in the Contrast House just as they're evident now. And then the part of just service to the region and being sort of that demonstration kind of project, and that the work that the college did with the Contrast House wasn't just about learning in the classroom for our students, but how can we help the region? How can we look and be of service to the places that our students are coming from, and to broader society, and as an example of doing that. And those are things that we still do today and are active in the community.
Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. When I hear that trumpet sound, I'm gonna get up out of the ground. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Ain't no grave gonna hold my